Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Zhang and I'm the founder and host of Empathy Gaps, a non YouTube video podcast. It can be hard to stay motivated. However, setting a goal, having an incentive, and breaking down your plan into smaller pieces can help you achieve. In this episode, Sydney and I will discuss how to stay motivated, the neuroscience and psychology of motivation, and his health research. Here is my conversation with him. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empathy Gaps, an online video podcast focused on creating a safe space to discuss mental health, psychology, and neuroscience. I'm Tiffany Zhang, your host, and today we have a very special guest, Sydney Wiredu. Sydney is the co-founder and CEO of CircleZ, a productivity app that helps manufacturing teams keep track of their goals. Sydney is also a third-year student at Harvard University, majoring in Chemistry and Neuroscience. Sydney, thank you so much for being here today and taking the time to join me. Before we start, is there anything that you want to add regarding to what you do and who you are?
No, I think you hit it pretty much on the spot. I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, of course, I am too. So, as the first question, I know I mentioned your company Circles. So, what was the inspiration behind co-founding Circles?
Yeah, for sure. So, something that I realized all throughout high school and upon coming to college is that a lot of students really struggle with burnout because of the high pressure of homework and exams and, meeting new people. And so, my co-founder, who was my best friend in high school, and I decided that we wanted to do something to help people stay motivated and stay connected with their friends. So, the first version of Circles was a mobile app that connects friends with other friends throughout their college campuses essentially to share goals and share positive motivation with one another. And so the whole aim with that was to reduce burnout. And eventually we got a couple hundred downloads on that. And we started expanding it more on the business side, which kind of led us to pivot into this manufacturing space because we realized that a lot of manufacturing teams actually were struggling with burnout. Employees are working super long hours. And that's kind of how we pivoted into that section.
hmm Wow, so that's so great to hear. I know AI is a field that's growing rapidly, and so I wanted to ask you, like, how is AI incorporated into circles, or like, is AI planning to be incorporated?
Yeah, definitely. We're using AI already on our SaaS platform. Essentially, what we're doing for the companies, at least, is we're giving them some data insights into what types of goals people are setting, how long it takes them to complete it, and which goals are completed the fastest. So we essentially have an AI chatbot that the company can query and ask questions about its internal data so that they can find barriers to profitability or barriers to the health of the company in general.
That's really insightful to hear because I know AI is really becoming like the next trend. And so I kind of had a question going back to circles. So you said it used to be like a student app. Is it still a student app or is it more like manufacturing based now?
Yeah, sure. So I have two products right now. So the mobile app for students is still live on the App Store. It's called Circles-Shared Goals if anybody wants to download it. And then we still have the manufacturing platform open, which is more on like a website side. So you don't use that on your phone. You would use that on like your laptop or a kiosk at a company. So right now we're mainly focusing on building out the business end of things, the manufacturing part, because we've already launched our app on the App Store and people are already using it.
What was the transition like from like going to a student app to also expanding to like the manufacturing area?
Yeah, I would say it was a little bit difficult because, building a student app as students is relatively easy to access because, you're surrounded by students, you're on a college campus, you can always ask people for feedback. But entering more of like a business industry like manufacturing, most of those populations are like a little bit older and they've kind of been in the industry for a while. So, as a 20-year-old college student, it's kind of hard to enter a manufacturing industry and tell them to use your product. So I think the biggest barrier was just kind of getting over that age gap or that generational like knowledge gap and really showing the companies that we know what we're talking about and this will be helpful for you, your team.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Thank you for sharing. I was really curious because I feel like, as you mentioned before, it is kind of like a big change to switch from like people your age and people you relate to people like that you might not have as much connection with. And so I wanted to talk to you about the psychology of motivation and how like our brains are motivated to do something. So what would you say like helps people keep track of their goals and like achieve them?
Definitely, yeah. So I do study neuroscience, so I might throw in a couple terms in there, but I would say that one of the like most important things that like I've learned throughout my college experience is that people typically only perform actions when they're incentivized to do so. So if you have some sort of goal, like you want to run a marathon or you want to, do great on your exam, but you don't break that up into like smaller subtasks, there's really no incentive for you to work towards it because you kind of just have this like super big picture idea in your head, but you don't really have any actionable steps that you can take towards, turning that into a smaller day by day type of thing. And so in terms of just like from a psychology and neuroscience perspective, I would say like one of the biggest like assets that we have as humans is the ability to set priorities and break things up into smaller subtasks. So that has been super helpful for me and a lot of my other co-founders as well in terms of just like reaching goals and setting out deadlines for ourselves.
Yeah, of course. And so I was wondering so Circles is a productivity app. So within the app, I assume that you can also like is it an app that like helps you break down these subtasks as well? Like how does Circles help people in like motivation?
Yeah, so within 10 seconds, you can create a group on the app, which essentially is a circle of you and your friends or family. And then within that circle, you can create different tasks. So whether it's, doing your laundry or going on a run, you can basically create a bunch of different goals in that circle and break them up into even smaller tasks. And at that point, everybody in the circle can kind of see what you're working on and you log your progress towards it. And so the goal with that is basically to create this like social responsibility environment where if you post into a circle that you're going to go to the gym tomorrow, now your mom and your dad can see whether or not you actually went to the gym tomorrow and they can kind of, bug you about it. Same thing with your friend group or whoever you choose to invite to your circle. So that's kind
Yeah.
of how we're leveraging that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And would it also be the same on like the manufacturing side? Like your coworkers post a task that they are working on and everyone can like see if they actually do it?
Yes, except in the cases where the employee is working on like more like private or sensitive types of tasks. In that case, only the manager will see what they're working on, just because with companies it's a little bit more it needs to be a little bit more secure in terms of not everybody in the company should be able to see what an employee is working on.
Yeah, of course. And so on the contrary, I know I asked you about like what makes us motivated. On the contrary, like what would make humans like or like unmotivated?
That's a good question. I think that one of the things that kind of like makes me demotivated, to be honest, is when I'm not immediately seeing results, which I know is not something that you should immediately strive towards because, it's more of like a long-term process. But I think on my end, when I'm working hard on something and I have the discipline and, I'm not seeing the results that I'm expecting immediately, I tend to get a little bit dismotivated or frustrated, which is, just a natural human flaw. We want to have results immediately. And I think one way to get around that is to remind yourself that, it only takes like one opportunity for things to change drastically. So, if you just keep showing up and keep working on your talent or your craft, it really only takes one day or one opportunity for it to take off. So I would just recommend people to keep going and never give up.
Yeah, of course. So now I kind of wanted to switch over to your health research because I know you do a lot about that. So I guess can you just kind of tell us what your health research is mainly about and what you've been working on recently?
100%. So I'm a student researcher in the Bragg Lab at MGH, and we are working on a rare disease known as X-linked dystonia Parkinsonism. So I've been with the lab for a little bit over a year, and essentially we're working on developing models to better represent the disease progression of XDP and eventually contribute towards, treatments for patients experiencing this disease. So this disease is primarily experienced by inhabitants of Panay, Philippines. It's X-linked, so primarily men, and it has some clinical features of both dystonia and Parkinsonism, hence the name X-linked dystonia Parkinsonism.
And then what kind of makes a rare disease rare? Like, is there like a certain number of people that can only get it for it to be rare? Like, how does that come about?
Yeah, so it depends on the standards that each country sets. So in America, I believe it's every 1 in 200,000 cases to be quantified as like a rare disease. But in other countries, it kind of varies depending on like the population size. But most of the time, rare diseases are, very, very low percentage and very, unusual and unexpected to happen, whether it's genetically passed down or kind of just like spontaneous disorder, somatic disorder. And I think a lot of these rare diseases are often like underfunded and understudied just because, it's not as large as a population size as something like, epilepsy or something with like, a bunch of people experience it.
Yeah, of course. And I wanted to so you said that it's like hard, like obviously it's harder to diagnose and treat rare diseases. So how can we like improve awareness and treatment of rare diseases?
Definitely. So I think it has to be a collaboration with both patients, physicians, as well as sponsorship organizations. And so one sponsorship organization that immediately comes to mind is NORD, NORD, the National Organization for Rare Diseases. They put on a bunch of different programs, advocacy work. They, do fundraisings, they do hackathons, and I think this just brings a lot of attention to the vast disparities that exist in rare disease research. And so, I think a great way to kind of get involved is to kind of, support the work that these organizations are doing even if you can't financially, just by, helping reshare their post or, sending them to your local legislators to, keep in mind that there are people experiencing these disorders.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know we talked about AI before. So within the realm of like rare diseases, how is AI being incorporated into like treatment and diagnoses of rare diseases?
Definitely, yeah. I'm super optimistic about the intersection of AI and rare disease research because a lot of the time people don't enter rare disease research because it's not a profitable industry, right? The patient population is very small, but very important to work on. So with something like AI, it can drastically drive down those costs of doing research. So, if you're at a computer, you can run computer programs like Mo or PyMol, which are basically like protein modeling environments. And so for people who are aiming to design drugs to help treat these patients, now with AI, they can sit at their laptop and test out a bunch of different combinations of drugs without having to actually take it physically to a lab. And so I think that this is going to drastically drive down the cost of producing drugs for patients experiencing rare disease. And obviously, it's not there yet. We have a lot of work to go, but I think I'm optimistic about the future.
Yeah, of course. I know AI is kind of like a hotly contested subject, especially in the realm of healthcare, because of different instances, like its pros and cons. Like it has a lot of benefits, but also disadvantages. And I think, as you said, I'm also very optimistic about like the field of AI in healthcare and also rare diseases. So I wanted to ask you about, continuing on the topic of rare diseases, I wanted to ask you about like what the psychological impact of having a rare disease is. Like what do you see in patients that are different from like patients having like another like very like another common disease, I guess, that is also deadly?
Definitely. I think some of the largest forces that I've been seeing are a sense of de-individuation because there's such like social stigma around having a rare disease. If you say that you have something like, breast cancer or, you have like melanoma or something else, these terms are often spoken about and, people kind of know what the symptoms are like. But if you say that you have like leukoencephalopathy, like nobody really knows what that is. So I think that the social stigma of having a rare disease makes it tough because people don't understand your disease. They don't really understand what you're going through. And then on top of that, kind of this sense of de-individuation, just because there's not so many people experiencing what you're experiencing. And so if you want to kind of find like a patient-centered, support group or somebody with what you have to, discuss about it, it might be pretty difficult in today's age. So I think that on like a psychological level, you probably feel pretty isolated. And I think that, we have a lot of great options going on already in America, like, therapy, there's some online resources, but I think that there's some more work we need to do in the rare disease space.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for your response. And kind of as a closing question, what is next for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a junior right now at Harvard, so I will be applying to med school in about 2 months. And in terms of like more long term, I definitely want to be a physician, but also work in the technology space. So I believe how I will make impact on the world is through the intersection of medicine and some sort of tech-based delivery system. So I want to treat patients, but I also want to be involved in the process of developing treatments for them.
Yeah, of course. And kind of as a follow-up question, do you think the research that you will be doing in terms of treatment will be centered around rare diseases, or do you think it'll be more like, I guess, like not like more wide than that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure yet, to be honest. I think, I still have about 12 years worth of training to do to become a physician, but I definitely want to, keep rare disease populations in mind. And if not working directly on them for like the science side, we'll always be, advocating for them and helping drive like fundraising. So not sure yet, to be honest, but definitely will be doing some work related for that patient population in the future.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, as you said, you still have like 12 years left, so that's plenty of time to like decide and I feel like you can always pivot later in life as well. Well,
Right.
thank you so much, Sydney, for our interview. I thank you so much for your time and your responses. I think they were very insightful. And as kind of a last final thing, where can people find you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, Sydney Wiredu. Also on Instagram, Sydney underscore W32. Generally just feel free to reach out to me. I think LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on DM, so feel free to reach out to me there.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Sydney, again for your time. And to everyone watching, I will see you next time. Bye.